Good evening and welcome to tonight's Undaunted, bringing into the news untold stories. I am Tabitha Akar. Let's begin. Tonight, we begin with a story that captures the painful reality many civilians continue to face amid the war in southern Cameroon's Ambazonia. A young university student left home, just like thousands of others, do every day, carrying dreams of a better future. But she never made it to her destination. Her life was cut short in Bambui, an incident that has left a family grieving, classmates in mourning, and a community searching for answers. This tragedy shines a spotlight on the everyday struggles of ordinary people caught in the middle of the war they did not create. Students trying to get an education, traders attempting to earn a living, healthcare workers serving their communities, and families simply hoping their loved ones return home safely at the end of the day. For many civilians, survival itself has become an act of resilience. Tonight, we ask difficult but necessary questions. What happens when roads become dangerous? When fear overshadows daily life? And when the promise of youth is replaced by uncertainty and loss? And in the midst of all this struggle for self-determination, who bears the greatest burden? The story of this young schoolgirl is not just about one life lost. It is a reflection of the human cost of a war that continues to reshape communities across southern Cameroon's Ambazonia. The realities are heavy. But well, let's head on to the prime headlines on Undaunted tonight. Young students killed in Bambui shooting as Civilian Toll Deepens in southern Cameroon's war. Also tonight, man shot and rescued after abduction attempt at the Bambui hospital. Bambui shooting leaves a medical doctor critically injured, sparks fresh security alarm. Also tonight, to take a look at GCE question leak disrupt exams as students and parents face growing uncertainty over rescheduled papers. Also tonight, road to isolation, worsening Bichachi highway strands riders as Libya lands transport crisis deepens. Chiroma alleges massive embezzlement in Cameroon, accuses Biya's administration of long-standing financial mismanagement. And on African scene, but see Uganda's Kiza Bizigi seeks court order to halt detention and treason trial. And on news across the globe, World Health Organization's chief commends Uganda's response as Ebola outbreak spreads in region. Now the news in details. A young university student has been killed in Bambui, southern Cameroon's Ambazonia, following a shooting incident that has once again worsened security situation in Ambazonia. Mirabel Kunyi, believed to be a level 200 student who was traveling on a commercial motorcycle on Monday when she was caught in the incident around the C-Bend area of Bambui. She was killed alongside a motorcycle rider identified as Khan Genesis, a young graduate who worked as a commercial motorcyclist. The incident has triggered renewed concern over the safety of civilians in Ambazonia, where ongoing insecurity continues to disrupt daily life and expose ordinary people to repeated risks. For many families, the tragedy is yet another painful reminder of the human cost of the war. Young people, particularly students and motorcycle riders, often remain the most exposed as they depend on daily movement for education, work, and survival. Motorcycle transport remains one of the most widely used means of mobility in Ambazonia, but it also places riders and passengers in vulnerable positions, especially in areas where security conditions remain unpredictable. Now we'll see that the killing of Mirabel Kunyi adds to a growing list of civilian casualties recorded in southern Cameroon, where communities continue to navigate fear, displacement, and economic hardship. Now, as investigations and reactions continue, residents are once again calling for improved security and protection of civilians, warning that continued instability is making everyday life increasingly dangerous. We are having really heartbreaking stories tonight coming out from Bambui, from the home front. But then with me on the show tonight is our legal mind, Barrister Mbesha. Barrister Mbesha, good evening and welcome to the show.
Good evening to you, and happy to have you here.
Barrister Mbesha, I trust you had a phenomenal day today.
I did.
Amazing. Barrister Mbesha, in light of this latest killing of a young school student, a girl, Mirabel, and not only Mirabel, a commercial motorcycle rider, Genesis, who took her through Bambui, how would you assess the current state of insecurity in Ambazonia?
Well, shortly put, the security situation has deteriorated, not improved. There's no improvement. It has rather gone from bad to worse. Most importantly, in Bambui, that stretch of area where the schools are found. But what is happening in Bambui, and Bamenda in general is a reflection of what obtains across Ambazonia. And so we are weeping for the death of this young girl. But you have put it out there in your initial introduction. This young girl is dead, she is not finished. The guy who was carrying her is also a graduate of that same place, the so-called university. Who had graduated, had nothing to do, became a motorbike driver. He too lost his life. He too was a young person. And so the question that we should be asking ourselves all the time, how many more of our youth shall we lose through violence? How many more of our youth shall we lose? How many more of our citizens shall we lose without anybody being held accountable for the acts? There have been so many deaths in Bamenda. Let us focus purely on Bamenda and Bambui. And there have always been promises of investigations, no results ever found. Nobody has ever been held accountable. Could this just be a question of negligence? It's possible, but if it is negligence, it is one too many. Because we expect that as a government, wherever the government is, it is the colonial government, a legally instituted government, their primary responsibility is to ensure the security of the citizens. And this young girl and the young man and the rest who have died before them, there is nothing to dispute about that. They are citizens of that area. They live there and they deserve protection. And whoever hurts them is supposed to be held accountable. By who? By the government. If the government is holding nobody accountable, the government is giving no results of the investigations, is it worth the pains calling ourselves citizens of that place? Is it worth the pains for somebody from Kambe, from Womb, from Mamfe, renting a house to put a child to study? Because that's the life of a child. We don't know what that child would have become to Ambazonia in general. But at the very least, that child or those children were something to their own families. The families have spent a fortune of whatever they did not even have to send them to schools that did not even exist. I've said it many times here before. The so-called University of Bamenda, university created on pieces of paper without anything. If it was a university created like a real university, if it existed like a full-fledged university with all what is required. The compound will be fenced. The students will be in campus. They will live in hostels. There will be protection ensuring there. There will be university police to at least guarantee the basic elements of security. These things are not there. There's something called University of Bamenda, I said. On the piece of paper, you live where you want if you can survive. There's something similar called University of Boya. We don't know where they live. They should live in the country. They are exposed to all types of dangers, which dangers are even common around the world. Because if you are a young guy, if you are a young lady, and you are just walking down the street and protected without camera, without anything, somebody will rape you. Somebody will rape you. If you're a young man just aspiring to live like the bike driver, without any protection, somebody will kill you to take the small money that you have. And so again and again, how do we get here? How do we get out of it? Is the question that we should be asking ourselves. Over to you.
Now, before we respond to that question, Barrister Mbesha, as I said earlier, there are a lot of reports about insecurity coming out from Bambui. Let's take a look at this report. A man is receiving treatment at the General Hospital after escaping from suspected armed fighters who allegedly attempted to abduct him in Bambui on Monday. According to eyewitnesses, the armed men had kidnapped the victim and were transporting him toward a forested area on a motorcycle. Near Bambui Hospital, the victim began struggling with his captors. The struggle reportedly caused the motorcycle to crash, leading to a physical confrontation on the road. The man luckily managed to break free and ran into the hospital premises for safety. Witnesses say the two gunmen pursued him inside, shot him in the foot, and attempted to drag him away. Sources at the scene say a disagreement then broke out between the attackers. One allegedly wanted to release the victim, while the other insisted on shooting him in the abdomen. Sadly, a pharmacy worker who witnessed the incident pleaded with the gunmen to spare the man's life. After the confrontation, the attackers left the hospital. Medical staff rushed the wounded man to the emergency ward and called for an ambulance to transfer him for further treatment. Now, while hospital workers were preparing the evacuation, the gunmen reportedly returned to the facility in another attempt to seize the victim. The renewed presence of armed men forced staff, patients, and caregivers to flee in panic. The ambulance was eventually able to evacuate the wounded man safely. He was taken to the General Hospital, where he is currently receiving treatment for gunshot wound to the foot. His condition has not been officially disclosed. The incident has heightened fear among Bambui residents. Kidnappings and attacks linked to the ongoing war have continued to threaten civilian lives and disrupt access to health care in Amazonia. Also, we see that health workers say attacks on or near medical facilities violate medical neutrality and put patients and staff at risk. Humanitarian organizations have repeatedly called on all parties to the conflict to respect the safety of all civilians, of hospitals, and access to treatment without fear. Now, local authorities have not yet issued an official statement on the incident. We see that the motive for the attempted abduction and the identities of the attackers remain unconfirmed. This is a sad story coming in from Bambui, Barrister Mbesha. What's your thought on this, another case of insecurity?
Yes, it's something similar, but let me correct something. This is not where we talk about medical neutrality. Medical neutrality is talked about in cases of organized warfare. They have an army, well organized, who are identified as hospital. Not indiscriminate crime spray around the town. In the other summer, we are talking about a young student, where in Bambili, the same area, killed, and her driver, the motorbike driver, a former student, killed. Now we have shifted focus from the student, but still in the same environment, to people, people being attacked in the streets, violently attacked in the streets without fear. They try to adopt you, they have guns. You flee into a hospital, they follow you there and they're fighting with you there. Openly in daylight, whatever time. Struggling to adopt you with guns. In open daylight. Where in Bambili, where in Bamenda, where in Ambazonia. This is a total breakdown of law and order. This is absolute insecurity that you can imagine anywhere else in the world. If this sport becomes so brazen, to follow people to the hospital and catch them, to attempt to extract them from the hospital beds by force, and to shoot at random and go free, what else will they not do? And again, you have said until now, no official statement. Where is the so-called government of Cameroon in Bambili? Where are all the generals in Bamenda, the super mayors in town, the commanders, the generals, the colonels, and so on and so forth, who are in Bamenda? Bamenda includes Bambili. Where are they? That crime rate will rise this high. But again, is this deliberate or what? Have we seen this happen somewhere in Douala, somewhere in Garawa, where criminals follow you to the hospital to catch you? No. Why is this thing happening in Ambazonia? With impunity is a question we've not answered, which we must answer. It is because there's total absence of government. It is because these people don't consider this. Let me tell you a calculation which is true. If that girl killed, or if that young man Avatanga or big guy in Yaoundé, I can guarantee you to have investigated and caught the criminals. But they wouldn't do it because they have no meaning to them. All what's important for anybody living there, you go, thousand million, which figures the Greek elect, figures the can for positions in Yaoundé. I represent people. Give me a bigger post. I represent 500,000. Give me a chef de bureau. That's all what it is about. And again, this is all what we fight for. The whole idea of living is to live in security. God did not create man. God did not create woman to come and suffer. We did not create to live in security. We created countries to have governments, which governments are bound, duty bound, to provide us security. If such governments fail, they have to go. But that's not the case of nobody is sending away a mayor. The generals, the colonels are not elected. And so how do we hold these criminals accountable in these sort of circumstances? It is not the first time in Bambili. It is not the first year in Ambazonia. We are 9 years into this disorder, where houses will be razed without question asked, where Mami Api will be killed in the street without anything, where Florence Ayafa will die in the street without any further question. And we can name them without numbers. And so this is why we should fight, I think. And we are fighting. All what we pray is that God should deliver us from this evil. We are not supposed to be here, but we are here. But we're human beings. We have to survive. We have to fight for survival. And that is all what it is about. Our children will not go through this. If we have to give up, what excuse shall we give to this young girl who died for no reason? What excuse shall we give for this gentleman who was running to a hospital to save himself, and then he will be extracted from there to be killed without further question asked? Why? Why? We must ask. This is intolerable. This is unacceptable. Enough is enough. Over to you.
Enough is enough, Barrister Mbesha. I would agree with you. To ask really critical questions. Where are these people? I mean, where are they? But then let's see something happening. Yet another issue of insecurity in Bambui. A medical doctor has been critically injured after being attacked by unidentified gunmen in Bambui, in southern Cameroon, in the latest incident highlighting the worsening security situation linked to the ongoing war. Dr. Yombov Clinton was reportedly returning home after participating in sporting activities when he was ambushed and shot by armed assailants. According to reports from the area, the attackers opened fire on the doctor, striking him in both legs and leaving him with severe injuries. Following the attack, he was rushed to the Bamenda Regional Hospital, where he is currently receiving intensive medical care. Medical sources indicate that his condition remains critical as healthcare personnel work to stabilize him. The shooting has sparked concern among residents and members of the medical community, many of whom view the attack as another troubling sign of the deteriorating security environment across Amazonia. Healthcare workers, teachers, traders, students, and ordinary civilians have increasingly found themselves caught in the violence that has gripped the region. The war, which began in 2016 and later escalated into an armed conflict and confrontation between the Amazonian State Army and French Cameroonian government forces, has resulted in thousands of deaths, widespread displacement, and significant disruptions to daily life. Communities across Amazonia continue to experience frequent incidents of violence, including kidnapping, targeted attacks, armed clashes, and road ambushes. Residents in Bambui and surrounding areas have repeatedly expressed concerns over growing insecurity, particularly along major roads and community routes, where armed attacks have become increasingly common. The persistent violence has created an atmosphere of fear, affecting economic activities, education, healthcare delivery, and freedom of movement. Now we'll see that the latest attack on Dr. Yumbo Clayton comes at a time when many civilians are already struggling with the humanitarian consequences of the war. Medical professionals working in conflict-affected areas face significant risks while providing essential services to communities with limited access to healthcare. As investigations into the shooting continue, local residents are calling for greater protection of civilians and essential workers, warning that continued insecurity threatens to further deepen the humanitarian crisis unfolding in Amazonia. Barrister Mbesha.
It's quite difficult sometimes to analyze. This is, again, let me correct this thing. It is not increasingly becoming insecure. No. It is not increasingly becoming insecure. It is perpetually insecure. Amazonia for the last 9 years, 10 years is perpetually insecure. Insecurity has taken over every place, including our hospitals, including our health units, even with the doctors who are not even inside. They are just walking around, going home after work. They are not safe. It is not new. That's why I say it is not increasing, it is perpetual. Remember the story of the Manfred Hospital burned down. That was the whole hospital put out there. Bent down, no question asked. They didn't spare the patients who were there. They didn't spare the nurses. They didn't spare the hospital staff. Everybody was there. If you had to die, you die. And so again, it is unfortunate. Poor Dr. Yumbo. Is that how he's called? He did nothing wrong. He's not even said to be an Amber as they call him. We don't even know who shot him anyway. And so again, it goes back to what I said earlier. What is the essence of government if that guy is a doctor? Probably didn't even know that he's a doctor. It could be you and me. We can no longer walk home after work. We can no longer go out to take a stroll from here to visit a neighbor in the evening or by day. What type of society is that? And so again, the insecurity has become perpetual. It's not increasing. And again, this is happening in Bamenda. You remember? The poll was in Bamenda about a month ago, but slightly under a month ago. A month and a few days ago. Precisely 16th of April. And the Pope prayed for peace. He told us peace would happen. He prayed for the end of the war. He said all what he could. And coincidentally, the bishops of Cameroon met sometimes last week. That was the first time they were meeting again, the Catholic bishops, after the Pope came and left. And I gathered from their final communique, they talked of peace. Peace is not just talking. It's no longer about talking. This is Bamenda. The Pope was in Bamenda. I thought they should have said something more hard, that the war must end. They should be instructing that government, whether they like it or not, to tell them the truth. The truth is difficult, it's bitter, but tell that government the truth. It's enough, people will no longer die. It's no longer about peace now. It's about the idea of stopping the killing people. Whether you suspect them, or they are suspects, or ordinary citizens, the killing of people must stop. And who will stop that? It is the government. Because the government has the instruments and the institutions to do it. Do it as soon as you can. And we'll understand that it is because of the war. The background is bad. You must first of all end the war. You must first of all ask why people are at war. And then you end the war. And of course, the perpetual insecurity will eventually go away. And so again, this is Bamenda. The Catholic authorities there that command a lot of big population. The world came to see the Pope. The world listened to the Pope. The Pope is gone. Instead of the peace the Pope had said, instead of the justice the Pope had preached, nothing has happened. Things have gone from bad to worse. Before the Pope came, they were not attacking hospitals. They were not even following people to catch them from the hospital bed and kill them. Now they are doing it. And so we ask, how far shall we go? How far shall this thing be allowed to happen? You and me can cry here. They may listen to us. But we must also accept that there are people who have a voice stronger than mine. That is the bishops, the pastors, and those people that have influence around the society. Over to you.
Barrister Mbesha, what an absolute choice of word right there. Insecurity has become a perpetual thing in Ambazonia, in Bamenda, in Bambui, in Bambili, in Boya, and several locations in Ambazonia. But then I would like to think that you made mention of government's role and responsibility in ensuring security. But then let's look at the role civilians also need to play. Now, what would you say about an effective responsibility or an effective measure that civilians can take to protect themselves against situations like this, Barrister Mbesha?
Well, summarily put, if I were there, and if you were there, the only thing is that you should be careful. But there's also much. I've analyzed a lot of things in this program before. This is not the issue of ghost town, for example, where we say, well, it was ghost town, don't risk it. Even if it was ghost town, I'm sure our ghost towns exclude hospital staff. They should take care of give the basic needs of patients. And if that doctor was even returning from the hospital on the ghost town day, and you kill him, would that be justified? No. What can the ordinary man do? What can you and me do? We are totally helpless. But just to be cautious, we have to be cautious. Would you have said that that girl would not have gone to school, for example? No. There was nothing wrong unless it was a ghost town day. We would have said that young man would not have used his motorbike unless it was a prohibited day. He had done nothing wrong unless he was violating his rules. And so, what shall we do? We have become helpless tools in the hands of a government that will listen to nobody. But the only thing we can do is to get ourselves out of this in the due course. And the only way you will do it is to fight back. You cannot fight back as an individual. Contribute widow's mind. Contribute your ideas to these contributions we do here. And let us hope that will not last for another 50, 60 years. Let us hope that will not last again for another 10 years. And we shall rebuild, therefore, going forward. That's just all. Individuals, be careful with their lives. Know where you tread. It is night, I've said, you don't go on venture into off-licenses drinking beer. Stay home. Let this thing come to you at the last resort. Don't expose yourself to these situations. For doctors and those who give essential services, we pray for you. Just do your best. At least the ordinary people pray for you. Because you are doing nothing wrong. During the war, for example, everybody in the world now during war, it is dangerous. There's a whole NGO called Medicines Sans Frontières, Medicines Without Border. They're supposed to give assistance. They give first aid front. It is not Cameroon. We can't ban them. Okay, if we are dying, there's nobody to go to the bushes and give you quinine, give you first aid. They banned the Medicines Sans Frontières for whatever reason, best known to them. And so our own. But the only tool we have is to fight back through this process that we're talking here. If you can support the ASA, you must support them physically and morally, because that's the only hope. That I have said again, We don't think this thing should last for another 10 years. It has lasted 65 years. It should not last for another 10 years. And we should rebuild going forward from that point. Over to you.
It's great to know that we have a target and we are pushing towards it, Barrister Mbesha. Now let's move over to the educational sector and let's see what's happening. Cameroon's Minister of Secondary Education, Prof. Nalova Yonga, has expressed concern over the leakage of GCE examination questions, describing it as a serious setback to efforts aimed at restoring the integrity of the Anglo-Saxon education system. The leak forced authorities to reschedule parts of the written examination session, creating uncertainty for candidates across the country. At a press briefing in Yaoundé on Monday, the minister said she was disturbed that examination material circulated online before the scheduled papers were written. A situation, she said, undermines the credibility of one of the country's most important academic assessments. She noted that the development reflects a worrying erosion of examination standards and justified the decision to reschedule affected papers as necessary to safeguard fairness, credibility, and the dignity of the system. Prof. Yonga emphasized the importance of the GCE within educational tradition, noting that it remains a key academic milestone for students who pass through the system. She recalled her own experience within the educational framework, underscoring the long-standing value attached to the examination. She also questioned the implications of candidates having prior access to examination questions, warning that such practices compromise the purpose of assessment and weaken the credibility of examiners and the system as a whole. However, the rescheduling has triggered frustration among students and parents, many of whom say the disruption has increased emotional stress, financial pressure, and academic uncertainty during a critical examination period. Candidates are now required to adjust revision schedules at short notice, while families face additional logistical and economic strain. Educators warn that repeated disruptions to the GCE process risks further eroding public confidence in the examination system and deepening anxiety among students, particularly those in final year classes whose academic progression depends on the outcome. The GCE remains one of the most important academic benchmarks in Ambazonia, Southern Cameroon's education system, but recurring concerns over malpractice and administrative setbacks continue to raise questions about its stability and credibility. Now, as authorities work to manage the fallout, attention is now shifting to how quickly the rescheduled papers will be conducted and whether stronger security measures can be introduced to prevent further breaches. Barrister Mbesha. Now, following the GCE question leak that led to the rescheduling of papers, how would you assess the impact of this disruption on students and parents who are already under significant pressure? And what does it really reveal about the integrity of examination systems and the urgent need to restore public confidence in the GCE process in Southern Cameroon?
Well, I think the last part of your question is more important. How do you restore confidence in a thing like that? See, the GCE problem is a microcosm of what we are fighting for. We are fighting for the institutions of Southern Cameroon as they existed. It is well duplicated in the so-called GCE that you're talking about. For those of you who are very young who ever wrote the GCE, and I'm sure most of you in Cameroon wrote that GCE. The GCE, or the exam called GCE, is run by the GCE board. The GCE board has a chairman. The active staff is the registrar of exams. They set exams, they organize exams, they mark them, they publish results. That's the work of the GCE board. And therefore, one would expect that if there was a problem, if there's a leakage, any problem arising in the organization, the marking to the publication of the results should be addressed by the board. But who's talking there? The minister. Is the minister the board chairman? No. Is the minister the registrar of the board? No. The minister is a politician put out there to run the Ministry of National Education. And so you ask yourselves, where is the board in this setup? Why are they absent? Does the minister know what happened? If he knew, it would be secondary. The people who are organizing the exams should know first-hand information, should give you first-hand information about what the problem is. But they are silent. Why? Because they have been silenced. They have been silenced by the so-called Ministry of National Education. And that will take us back to explain why I've said this is exactly a duplicate of what we're fighting for. In 1961, we purportedly got independence. Between 1961 and 1976, the GCE, or all those exams, were run by the University of London. We wrote the London GCE. I personally wrote the London GCE in 1975. I think we were the last batch of the writing of the London GCE. There was no crisis there. From 1976 onwards, the Ministry of National Education took over the running of exams in Ambazonia, southern Cameroon. And there the problem started. There were leakages, there was everything you could imagine. Ambazonians then protested. But remember, 1976 is coming after 1972, after they abolished the state of West Cameroon. Our parents protested. They fought for they didn't fight for a GCE board. They fought for an examination board, a board that would encompass all examinations in the former British Southern Cameroon. But they gave them a GCE board after fighting for as long as 20 years. From 1976 to 1993, the fight was on. And July 1st, 1993, they created what they call the GCE board today. That creation of the GCE board created structures to manage exams, which is why I talked about the registrar, the chairman of the board, and so on and so forth. And they were supposed to be independent of the Ministry of Education, of National Education. Madam Nalova is the Minister of National Education. She's not the chairman of the board of the GCE board. She's not even a marker. She's not an examiner in any form or shape. And so down the road, they realize that these people are trying to get something that benefits them. And they have been chipping into it, taking it away, chiseling part of it away, until we find ourselves where we are today. There's still a GCE board, there's still a GCE registrar, there's still a chairman of the board, but none of them has any powers. They still reflect what we've been fighting for, of course. In 1961, they purported to give us a so-called a federation, where the federated state had no power at all. Remember? Article 38 of the Federal Constitution then. Article 39, we said the Prime Minister shall be appointed by the President, the Prime Minister of so-called a federated state, along with his ministers. We said that the President can dismiss them at will. It's just the same thing like here. The board can be dismissed by the minister. The registrar is now appointed by the minister, and the whole responsibility turns to the minister, not turns to the board. And so they have watered down this thing to kill what they gave. Fast forward, we started this war in 2016. In 2019, they purported to create regions, purported to create things they call House of Chiefs to please us. How many of those things have any meaning, practically? Rather, they have chiseled out everything they could do. Today, for example, in Ambazonia, we have more crises involving chieftaincy than we had even before 2019. And yet they have a House of Chiefs in Boya, one in Bamenda, whose superior leaders, the governors, have become the chiefs of chiefs and the fronts of fronts. And so that is the core of the problem. It is the core of the Ambazonian fight. If there must be an examination board or a GCE board, If that GCE board or the mentioned board must be autonomous, it must be autonomous. Autonomy means being held accountable if things go wrong with it. Now, who are we going to hold accountable? Is it the minister who is giving us the statement? Is it the registrar who has said nothing? Is it the chairman of the board who has become totally mute? We don't know. That is the bigger problem. We have seen nothing yet. That's just the beginning. As we protest, things go from bad to worse. And who knows? We are going back to 1972, where everything was yes and we had nothing more to say. Otherwise, the registrar, the chairman of the board, who are all supposed to be our own sons and daughters, where are they? The last check I found was that the chairman of the board is a retired civil servant, well-placed senior servant in the Ministry of Education. He has been Secretary General, he has been Professor. With all that is not enough. They must compensate him on retirement with the post of registrar, with the post of chairman of the board, which post is given to him by the minister, that he will never challenge them even if they're doing anything wrong. Enough is enough, we've said. Enough is enough with these old people who live and die in power. They don't believe in fighting for anything. If they believe in fighting for anything, I would rightly say these are the people who should have been put there. I remember the first chairman of the board was Mr. SNDO. He too was a teacher, the third principal of Bambui. But he had retired. He could pin his feet and say, no, this will not happen because he had nothing to fear. He was not looking for any more promotion. He was just looking for the good job, the perfection of the board, which needed to be improved as time went on. It didn't need to be destroyed. But as we speak, all what has happened in the board has been leading to its destruction, not to its improvement. It has been leading to a return to 1976, where this thing was in the ministry. And that's why, as you speak, you find a minister, the only authority giving instructions, telling us what happened, whereas she cannot answer any question more than that. Over to you.
It's the sad realities we see, Barrister Mbesha. Thank you for taking us through history lane and making us see how this whole stuff started, this whole situation started. But then really critical questions we need to ask about development, especially in the educational sector. But then let's see what has happened, not just in education, in infrastructure. Commercial motorcycle riders operating along the Bisali-Bichachi Road in Wambene subdivision, Libya-Lem division, have raised concerns over the deteriorating condition of the route, which has become increasingly difficult to navigate following the onset of the rainy season. The road serves as a critical transport link for residents, traders, and motorcycle operators who rely on it to move goods and connect communities across the area. For many young people in Libya-Lem, commercial motorcycle transport remains one of the few available sources of income, making the worsening state of the road a significant threat to their livelihoods. Recent videos circulating on social media show large sections of the road submerged in mud, with motorcycles becoming trapped and unable to proceed. The footage underscores the urgent need for rehabilitation work on a road that has long suffered from neglect and inadequate maintenance. Let's see for ourselves.
This is Cameroon. We're going to Southwest. See how the youths are struggling to earn a living. Instead of going to Bisali, right down to the Chachi, the Libya-Lem. All this is already very bad. Now, our youths are suffering.
The situation reflects broader infrastructure challenges across Libya-Lem, one of the most isolated divisions in Ambazonia. Limited road networks, difficult terrain, and years of underdevelopment have left many communities struggling to access markets, healthcare facilities, schools, and other essential services. Across southern Cameroon, numerous towns and villages remain effectively cut off from reliable transportation, particularly during the rainy season. Roads that serve as the only source and access routes to several communities frequently become impassable, leaving residents dependent on motorcycles to navigate hazardous and deteriorating pathways. Despite the harsh conditions and risks involved, motorcycle riders continue to transport passengers and goods through this route, providing an essential service to communities with few alternatives. Many riders also face additional financial pressures from checkpoint controls and transport-related levies while operating under increasingly challenging circumstances. Resident and transport operators are now calling for urgent intervention to rehabilitate the Bisali-Bichachi road and improve road infrastructure across the region. They warn that continued neglect could further isolate communities, disrupt access to essential services, and undermine economic activities in an area already facing significant development challenges. Barrister Mbesha. Well, we talk about the worsening educational system, which we just had. We also talk about the deteriorating condition of infrastructure. Look at the Bisali Road, Barrister Mbesha. I know you saw that right there. What do you have to say? What's your perspective?
Well, we talked about insecurity, infrastructure. They are all linked together. Coincidentally, I come from Libyalam, and I know those parcels of land very, very well. I feel sorry for those young men doing that. But even more sorry, I feel for those poor bikes. I'm not sure the manufacturers intended them to be suffered like that. Don't think the car motorbikes have gone there to hell. They are chiseled into, they bring everything, tie a piece of wood on them to make them survive the bad roads, the impossible roads. And again, I've said, it's not just that it is linked together. There are schools inside there. Will you imagine a teacher being sent to go and teach there? How does he get there? How does he get there if he got there at all? What type of service do you expect him to deliver? If he left his family somewhere else where it is at least manageable, and he went on those type of roads to get there and teach, be it a woman or man, what type of service do you expect that guy to render there? Zero service. We're talking about security. I remember in the 1990s, I was in Boya there. We used to go to Fontaine. We went to court sessions. And the court there in Fontaine, Menji, commands all those areas. There are gendarmes in that area there. The gendarmes will catch a thief man, a thief, a suspected thief. And they will have to bring that guy to be tried in Menji. Going around the whole world on foot with their so-called suspects. I remember asking one day, I asked the brigade commander, how do you do it? These people are suspects. They could run away. He said, no, they depended entirely on the local chiefs. If they caught the guy, and this guy has raped somebody or has stolen somebody, they depended on the local chiefs to help them. Otherwise, the guy will run away. But if he run away, he'll go back to the village. So they depended on the local chiefs to help them identify those guys. Otherwise, they had no tool. They themselves were going on foot to transport, to move their criminals, their suspects to court. And thereafter, they will do the journey back on foot. We'll go around the world through Batibu, Bamenda to get there. And so, that is the plight of Libyalam. Libyalam was created in 1992, along with Kupe Malenguba, along with Boyo, along with Ngo Kutunjia. Those are divisions that were created then. Which of those divisions that I've mentioned has any road there? Zero. There's nothing in Kupe Malenguba. Because in the south, they created Kupe Malenguba and Libyalam. Libyalam has nothing. We have seen pictures from Kupe Malenguba. Just saw on the like. Is there any road in Ngo Kutunjia? There's no road there. We have seen pictures from BBC and other places. Is there anything in Boyo? Nothing there. We have seen hospitals running away from there to go and establish somewhere else. And so we ask ourselves, why do we have to go through all this? Why do we have to go through all this? How long shall our people suffer under these conditions? These were created in 1992. What are those who existed before them in 1992? Where is India? Where is India? Where is Momo? This was created in 1964 or so. Where are they in terms of infrastructure? Zero infrastructure, zero security, zero development. I ask, how long again? What other questions do we need to ask? If there's nobody listening to us in Yaoundé, if there's anybody still listening to us in the world, we should ask the question, why, what sin do we commit? as Southern Cameroons will be put in this state. In 1961, when our plight was started, we were at the same level with South Korea, with North Korea. Today, they manufacture cars and sell them abroad. We were better than Indonesia, talk less of Pakistan. Where are we and why are we here suffering with impunity? Why are we here suffering with complicity in silence? They kill our people, nobody says nothing. Our people suffer. The motorcycles they buy from Korea, from Japan, suffer too. I wonder if they even use gas. Probably they use water to run those things there, because there's no gas station there. And then again, why? The answer is underdevelopment, deliberate underdevelopment, torture, well, I don't know what to say. Negligence, not negligence, but complicity in the destruction of a people. A vibrant people, we should be able to live. We don't grumble against motorbikes. It was also good. Somebody will ride a motorbike from Bamenda to Mount Fair. No question asked. Here in the United States, right long further than that. It was very good. Somebody would be able to drive his car from Bamenda to Ndop, from Ndop to Nkambe, from Nkambe to Boya. No questions asked. Why? With all these resources that we have? What happened to the Ndop rice? What happened to the Santa coffee? What happened, of course, to the Sonora, where all the oil comes from Limbe? Where is this money? Why? Over to you.
A sad one, Barrister Mbesha. Now let's head over to a political comment by Isa Chiroma. All right, before we get to that, let's head over to a short break. Chiroma alleges massive embezzlement in Cameroon, accuses Biya administration of long-standing financial mismanagement. From exile in the Gambia, opposition figure Isa Chiroma Bakari has once again leveled serious allegations against President Paul Biya's administration, accusing it of widespread corruption and financial mismanagement over decades in power. On Monday evening, the FSNC leader claimed that as much as 80 trillion francs CFA may have been embezzled under the current regime over its 46 years in office. He compared the figure to Cameroon's estimated cumulative national budget over the same period, which he put at about 114 trillion francs CFA, suggesting what he described as systemic loss of public resources. Chiroma described the administration in strongly critical terms, accusing it of long-term mismanagement of state funds and vowing accountability if his political camp comes to power. He further stated that those allegedly responsible would face prosecution. The remarks come amid ongoing political tensions and renewed debates over governance, accountability, and the management of public finances in Cameroon. However, questions remain over Chiroma's political trajectory and immediate intentions. While close associates had previously suggested an imminent return to the country, the opposition figure did not confirm any timeline during his latest address. Instead, he called on citizens to take a more active role in political change, urging popular mobilization against what he described as entrenched corruption within the state system. The statement has drawn mixed reactions. Supporters view it as a bold indictment of long-standing governance failures, while critics argue it reflects a pattern of political messaging delivered from exile without clear, immediate engagement on the ground. As political discourse intensifies, the broader debate continues over accountability and governance and the credibility of competing claims in Cameroon's contested political landscape. Barrister Mbesha. In light of Issa Chiroma's Bakuri's latest allegations of massive embezzlement within the BR's administration and his continued political messaging from exile, how do you interpret these claims? What are your perspectives? And let's look at the political climate of these also in southern Cameroon.
Well, all I can say is that we know Issa Chiroma. He's supposed to be president-elect. But before getting there, it was something. People may dislike him for whatever reason, but you cannot dislike his message, because Issa Chiroma is an insider. He has been in government until 2025. For decades, not for months, for decades. He has even been the spokesman of government. So he knows what he's talking about. I cannot quarrel with his figures because he's an insider. But from outside, we have all those symptoms right there that have never been denied. For example, recently, just still ongoing, the story of more than 150 tons of gold sold out to Saudi Arabia. And the government said they were 14 kilograms. Imagine 14 kilograms compared to more than 135 tons of gold. Why? Where did the money go to? The whole budget of Cameroon, in terms of money, is not worth up to 135,000 tons of gold. And so where did this money go to? People stole it. We're talking about roads there in Mbesha. We're talking about roads everywhere in the so-called Cameroon. 135,000 tons of gold could dig all those roads. But yet nothing is done. But the figures are coming from the government ministry. So Issa Chiroma is not lying. We have heard about something they call green core that deals with the gas, exportation of gas. We have heard of Sonora and SNH, whose accounts are launched at the presidency. SNH is run by an individual appointed by the president who is sick, and his absence, his wife runs it and floats other companies to follow him. This is official. Where does money go to? To the president and his acolytes. Is Chiroma lying? Chiroma is not lying. All this money that is passing through SNH, through Sonora, and entering private pockets, is it the money? No. So Chiroma is perfectly right in what he says. You may dislike it, you may like it, but that's just a fact. Since when shall Cameroonians, let me put it like that, learn to hold these people accountable? Is talking enough? Maybe never. Because these guys are dictators. They are thieves. They are not just dictators. They are thieves. They are not just thieves. They are armed robbers. You don't confront an armed robber with your bare hands, because the reason why the armed robber carries arms is that if you dare challenge him, he or she will kill you, because they have arms with them. And so you need to become a David to bring down a Goliath. If you know the story of David and Goliath, Goliath was the tall man who thought that he was above everything, but David with the sling was able to bring him down. That's the problem of Cameroon. It's not that Issa Chiroma is lying. No, Issa Chiroma is not lying. Again, because he's an insider. He is saying the truth. But Issa Chiroma cannot liberate the country by himself. All those citizens of that country, I had 30 million of them, minus 8 Ambazonians, at least 25. They have the government they deserve. If they want to challenge that government, they can challenge and bring it down. Because no government is above the people. But without doing it, poor Issa Chiroma, he attempted to do it. Well, you see, he's an exile. There's not so much you can do from exile other than talking. The people on the ground have to act to put an end to that graft of the state. Are they acting adult? If they were acting worse, and he said Ekane, who was murdered outright for supporting this guy. If they are acting, where is Kamto, who was fraudulently refused, denied the right to stand for elections by fraud? They didn't even hide it. They did it by fraud, and they're still sitting there feeding on the crumbs of the administration. Yes, Issa Chiroma is telling the truth, but action is not dependent on Issa Chiroma. Action is dependent on the people. But the people are so well implanted, just as I said, going back to the GCE board, the examinations. People steal the money with impunity. They take actions to hide their tracks. They don't even need to hide because nobody will prosecute them. They don't even need to hide because they have the arms to fight against you if you dare mention anything. I think today on social media I saw a girl in Mbesha being detained for saying something. Perhaps a certain lawyer believed that it was defamation. Maybe it was defamation. But is the resolution going to lock her up? No. Defamation is a bailable offense. Charge her. Let her go back to her house. She has a residence. Come to court and give evidence. She's guilty. She's guilty. But do you have the instruments to suppress people, to gag people by force, and stop them from talking? Which is what they're trying to do to Issa Chiroma. Poor Issa Chiroma, you're done. Because you're not coming back to government. It is doubtful if you come back as a president. If you could, that would be wonderful for Cameroon. But keep trying. Cameroonians that you're talking to them, they have the yam and they have the knife. They either chase out these criminals and bring them to book. Because I've seen all on social media, people promising, Paul Biya is old. Oh, if he should go away now, we shall never prosecute him. No, there's no hiding place for criminals. If Paul Biya left power today, to me, even if he's dead, we will prosecute his corpse and punish him even in his grave. There's no need promising that you will not punish a criminal because you fear that the criminal, his ghost will come back and haunt you. That is not a solution. That is escaping from the problem. If Paul Biya dies, or anybody who has stolen the money, let that person be held accountable even in his grave. That will make his successors after him. Not that the graft, the money is stolen and kept in the house or kept in the bank is not theirs. That's the way you hold people accountable. Not promising them that you forgive them. Not promising, oh, I will never talk to his wife. I will never harass his wife, his children. No, that's complicity in the crimes, not accountability. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Barrister Mbesha. I mean, I really found this session, having to hear your perspective, really insightful. Well, this is where we'll let you go. So we'll head over to the rest of the news across the globe. Thank you so much for always being here, giving us your insights, your perspective, reactions, and thoughts to the report and the breaking stories, really untold stories we get from the home front. Thank you so much. Ugandan opposition leader Kizza Besigye has filed an application before the High Court seeking to stop his continued detention and the treason proceedings against him. Besigye, a four-time presidential candidate, argues that his rights have been violated since his arrest and prolonged detention following what his supporters described as his abduction from Nairobi, Kenya, in November 2024. In his court filing, he named Uganda's Chief of Defense Forces, General Muhoozi Kainerugaba, who is also the son of President Yoweri Museveni, as a respondent in the case. The legal challenge comes amid heightened political tension, with the treason trial against Besigye and an aid scheduled to commence on Thursday. Human rights organizations and opposition figures have repeatedly described the incident and charges as politically motivated. The military chief had previously made public statements on social media in which he threatened harsh action against Besigye, further intensifying concerns over the case. Besigye, who is a long-time political rival of President Museveni and former personal physician to the Ugandan leader, has faced repeated arrests and detention since entering opposition politics in 2001. Also tonight in Kenya, Kenya's High Court has upheld the impeachment of former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, ruling that Parliament acted within its constitutional powers in removing him from office. A three-judge bench determined that impeachment is a legislative process and that courts cannot override Parliament's decision on the merits of removal. The judges, however, found that Gachagua's right to a fair hearing was violated during the Senate proceedings and awarded him 50 million Kenyan shillings in damages. The court held that the Senate proceeded with the impeachment hearings in October 2024, despite Gachagua's reported illness and hospitalization, which limited his ability to fully respond to allegations against him. While this amounted to a constitutional breach, the judges ruled that it did not invalidate the overall impeachment outcome. The bench also rejected calls for reinstatement, noting that the office of Deputy President had already been lawfully filed by Kithure Kindiki. It warned that overturning the process at this stage would create a constitutional crisis by effectively recognizing two holders of the same office. On claims of inadequate public participation, the court ruled that the impeachment process met constitutional requirements, stating that citizens had sufficient opportunity to present their views. Allegations of bias against parliamentary officials were also dismissed, with the court describing their actions as procedural and within their mandate. Gachagua was impeached on multiple charges, including accusations of making ethnically divisive remarks. He was elected alongside President William Ruto in 2022, but later fell out with the administration following nationwide protests over tax policies in 2024. Now, following his removal, Gachagua formed the Democracy for the Citizens Party, which has since positioned itself as part of Kenya's opposition landscape. The ruling leaves his political future uncertain, as Kenyan law bars individuals removed through impeachment from contesting certain elective positions. His legal team has indicated plans to appeal the decision, extending the high-profile constitutional battle. Let's head over to news across the globe. A strong earthquake struck off Cuba's northwestern coast on Monday, sending tremors across parts of the Caribbean, including Cuba, Mexico, and sections of Florida, according to seismological authorities. The United States Geological Survey said the quake measured magnitude 6.1 and occurred at a shallow depth of about 26 kilometers. The epicenter was located roughly about 104 kilometers west-northwest of Mantua, placing it within a region that rarely experiences significant seismic activity. Seismologists noted that the event was unusual for the area, as it occurred within a tectonic plate rather than along a major boundary where earthquakes are more common. USGS records indicate that no earthquake of comparable strength has occurred within a 322-kilometer radius since the late 19th century, underscoring the rarity of the event. Although no tsunami warning was issued, the tremor was widely felt across the region. In Cuba, residents in several western provinces reported strong shaking, prompting people to briefly move outdoors amid concern, particularly in areas already affected by infrastructure strain and intermittent power outages. In Mexico, shaking was reported in popular tourist destinations on the Yucatan Peninsula, including Cancun, Playa del Carmen, and Tulum. Authorities activated emergency protocols in the affected state, while local officials said there were no immediate reports of major damage or casualties. Tremors were also detected in parts of Florida, though no significant impacts were recorded. Emergency and disaster agencies across the region continue to monitor the situation as aftershocks remain possible. Now over to the outbreak of Ebola. The Director General of the World Health Organization, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, has praised Uganda's handling of an Ebola outbreak linked to neighboring Democratic Republic of Congo, saying the country's response has helped slow transmission. During a visit to Kampala on Monday, Tedros noted that Uganda's surveillance and containment measures had been effective in identifying and managing cases. He also highlighted the government's decision to cancel major public gatherings, including the annual Matthias Day celebrations, as a preventive step to reduce crowd-based transmission risks. Health authorities say the country has recorded multiple Ebola cases, including imported infections from across the border, with additional local contacts under monitoring. Officials credit early detection system and coordinated border screening for limiting wider spread. Now, we'll see that Uganda's Ministry of Health said response capacity is being scaled up with treatment units and laboratories established in key border areas such as Umbontwe and Arua. Authorities also said trained health worker teams are being deployed in phases to support case management and surveillance. Tedros met President Yoweri Museveni during the visit, where discussions focused on cross-border coordination and response strategies. He cautioned against broad travel restrictions, arguing that targeted containment at transition sources remains more effective than measures that could disrupt economic activity. The outbreak has prompted some regional travel responses, including entry restrictions announced by other countries for travelers originating from affected states. The World Health Organization said it is working with the African Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and other partners to support Uganda and the wider region in containing the outbreak. This marks the 17th Ebola outbreak recorded in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where the current strain has been detected in the country's northeastern Ituri province, an area challenged by insecurity and limited infrastructure. Health experts continue to stress that Ebola spreads through direct contact with bodily fluids, and while no fully specific cure exists, rapid isolation and supportive care remain key to improving survival rates. Well, and with that, we've come to the end of Undaunted, bringing into the news on those stories. But before we go, a recap of our major headlines. In tonight's Undaunted, we saw young students killed in Bambui shooting. A civilian toll deepens in southern Cameroon's war. Man shot and rescued after abduction attempt at Bambui Hospital. Also, Bambui shooting leaves medical doctor critically injured, sparks fresh security alarm. Also tonight we saw GCE question leak disrupt exams as students and parents face growing uncertainty over rescheduled papers. Also tonight, road to isolation, worsening Bisali-Bichachi highway strands riders as Libya Lamb's transport crisis deepens. Chiroma alleges massive embezzlement in Cameroon, accuses B administration of long-standing financial mismanagement. And on the African scene, Uganda's Kiza Bizigi seeks court order to halt detention and treason trial. And in the rest of the news across the globe, World Health Organization's chief commends Uganda's response as Ebola outbreak spreads in the region. Well, that is all on Undaunted tonight, bringing into the news Untold Stories. On behalf of the entire ABC Amba newsroom, we say thank you for joining. We'll leave you with ABC Amba TV images. Good night and God bless you.